In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I thank Allah for His direction, His guidance, His love and mercy. I thank Him for sending guidance to His prophets, for giving us Moses with the Torah, Jesus with the Gospel, Muhammad ibn Abdullah with the Holy Quran. But I thank Allah most of all for His intervention in our affairs in the person of Master Farrakhan Muhammad, to whom all praise is forever due. And I thank Him for raising in our midst a divine reminder, leader, teacher, and guide, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I come before you as a student of their anointed and appointed one, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet all of you in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. How's everyone feeling? All praise is due to Allah. Last week I spoke to you on a subject which I later entitled The Planetary Alignment and Destruction in the Year 2000. And we discussed the forthcoming conjunction of 6 planets in opposition to the planet Earth, scheduled on the 5th of May of the year 2000, and the significance of that both in the physical world and in the universal order of things, but most important in the spiritual world, and what it portends in terms of the new millennium, in line with the series that I've been teaching called A New Way of Life, which deals with the actual self-examination and self-analysis method, how we go into self and determine how the mind operates. Now, last night in Nashville, Tennessee, where we had a very powerful, very beautiful event at Tennessee State University, I spoke to them on part 8 of A New Way of Life, and we dealt with the learning faculty of the brain, the cerebral cortex, and how between the ages of 14 and 28 we develop and begin to discriminate and differentiate things. Yes, today, what I would like to do is speak to you on a subject that is relevant to what I spoke to you about last Sunday. And today's topic is the deportation of Moon and the significance of living in Atlantis. Many have dismissed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's narrative of the creation of the Earth's satellite that we know as Moon. But he told us, as he learned from the Mahdi, Master Farrakhan Muhammad, that 66 trillion years ago, among the original people, a scientist who was dissatisfied used powerful explosives in an attempt to destroy the entire planet. A very wise and brilliant original man. But because he was upset over his failure to force everyone on the planet to speak the same dialect, he became disappointed, and his disappointment led to frustration, and his frustration led to a destructive act.
Yes, ma'am.
Minister Farrakhan has continued to teach us this, that these explosives were so powerful that they actually caused the separation of 1/3 of the planet, which shot out into space as a result of this explosion and became what we now call Moon. And I want to deal with that in relationship to the significance of the fact that you and I today live in a city that is called Atlanta.
Yes, ma'am.
And know this, that nothing in life is accidental.
That's right.
And nothing is without an underlying meaning, and nothing is without significance.
That's right.
Now, I want to support, defend, justify, and testify to the truth of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who said that 66 trillion years ago, part of this planet blew into space and is called moon. Plato, the Greek scholar, wrote these words, and I quote, "There lay an island larger than Libya and Asia. In this island of Atlantis, there existed kings of great and marvelous power. There occurred portentous earthquakes and floods, and one grievous day and night befell them, when the whole body of your warriors was swallowed up by the earth, and the island of Atlantis was swallowed up by the sea and vanished." Now, when this Greek philosopher wrote this was the first time that the existence of an ancient civilization that disappeared came to the knowledge of the Caucasian people. But if you study ancient legends around the globe, all of them tell of this event that in the very distant past, and no year is given in any of the narratives, but in the very distant past, a huge continent stretched across what we now call the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I also want to share to you from a book called Beyond the Horizon, another writing and another justification. It reads as follows: "Ancient legends around the world suggest that Atlantis did in fact exist at some time many cycles ago, a huge continent stretching across most of what we now call the Atlantic Ocean. One end of this continent was near the Iberian Peninsula and northern Africa. The other end was near the southern reaches of North America, Central America, and the north tip of South America." And as I reminded us last week, we have been taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that the people that were the indigenous people of this continent, North America, originated in what we now call Asia, but they were punished because of their rebellion and disobedience to God's laws, and they walked from that part of the continent, the globe, to this one. And people laughed at that and made mockery of that. But once that ocean was all land. It reads on to say, the Toltecs, and this may not be the correct pronunciation, but the Nahatlakas, Nahautlas, ancient and now lost tribes that lived in Central and South Mexico even before the Aztecs and the Mayans, described their birthplace as being a lost land to the east. The Toltecs said they came from a land called Atlantis. The Nahatlakas said they came from a place called Azatlan. The Aztecs said that their ancestors lived in a place called Azatlan. The Paria of Venezuela said that their original homeland, a large island in the ocean, was destroyed by a catastrophe. The name they gave to their village in Venezuela was a tribute to that lost homeland, and they call it Atlantis. In the Ora Linda book, which contains the traditional history of the Frisian people of Northern Europe, it contains an account of a once great land that disappeared into the ocean after a massive earthquake. They called it Alzaland. And they said that there were seafaring people who disappeared, and wild waves rose so high over the hills and the mountains that everything was buried under the ocean. The Celtic people, now we're talking about Caucasian people now, in Europe, said that their ancestors came from a land called Avalon, which was finally added to the kingdom of the sea god, and they said their ancestors came from a place called Atlantica. The Portuguese believed that there was a place called Atlantida, which once existed in the ocean west of Portugal, and that the Azore tribe, the original people of Portugal, are all that is left because they lived on mountain peaks. And they were able to escape massive tidal waves that resulted from some incredible cataclysmic destructive force. The Spanish people call the same land Atalaya, and say that all that remains of it are what today are called the Canary Islands. In North Africa, the Berber people maintained the legend of a once rich land called Attila, which sank beneath the sea, but they were expecting it to one day rise again. The Phoenician people spoke of an island of vast wealth called Antilla, and the ancient sacred texts of India describe a continent called Attila. And so all over the globe, all of the original people bear witness that there was once something here that is gone, and they are waiting for it to return. Now, I mentioned to you the clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. I mentioned him last week. He also spoke of Atlantis, describing its culture as the most advanced civilization on earth. Now, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us of this destruction, he said that the only people that survived this explosion were named Shabazz. Shabazz is an ancient word. It's an Arabic term, but it's so ancient, it's not even included in the language today. But Shabazz means unconquerable or indestructible. He said that this family or tribe were the only ones that survived the destruction, and that you and I are the descendants of that people, the tribe of Shabazz. And he said that everywhere in the Bible where you see the story of Israel, because when the scholars began to rewrite scripture and write new versions, Shabazz was in the scripture. Shabazz being a family, a tribe of people who fell out with God, who broke a covenant. Those people were Shabazz, and they changed Shabazz to Israel. So he said that every place in the Old Testament where you see Israel, that would be Shabazz. Now, Edgar Cayce, who lived in this century, described these people as being metamorphosed from a spiritual plane into human form. Before them, there were no people. Once there was a vacuum in space, And then from a spiritual plane of existence, these people were so advanced, they didn't even have a material form. And then there came a time when they manifested. And they became more and more attached to power and to the material world. And they suffered a series of devastations, and the final one destroyed their place of habit where they lived. Now, this subject matter is the focus of such intense study that they call people that study it Atlantologists. And these people who study this believe that a few survivors escaped, just as we were taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, they said that the survivors went to other lands, among them Egypt and the Mexican Yucatan, where they developed cultures. And in both those places, in the Yucatan and in Egypt, we bear witness that very advanced civilizations once lived there, and they both built pyramids independent of one another, which indicates that at one time they were together or they came from the same source. And in both places you see pyramids and very advanced mathematical arts developed thousands of years before Christ. Now, all of this, beloved, is to say to you that we are in a time when we must begin to study what facts do exist. In other words, become mathematical. Islam is mathematics. Mathematics is Islam. Meaning that you take the known to resolve and manifest the unknown. And so, according to these accounts that I have been sharing with you, the word Atlantis in its original form actually meant father. And so the people that lived in this land that was once part of earth and is now dead and is moon were actually the fathers of civilization. And according to the accounts of Edgar Cayce and all these that I have shared with you, these people were so powerful. They had harnessed the sun and used it for technological power. And remember, to this day, the Caucasian people cannot comprehend how the pyramids were built. But the writings say that these people, and these are your parents, your ancestors, that's why it's relevant. These people were able to capture solar energy in crystals. And they were capable of using the Earth's geomagnetic forces to their own ends. But the writings say that in the end, they used their power to go to war with each other. And that somehow they unleashed their technological power in a devastating manner, setting off the final cataclysm that sent them sinking to the ocean's depth. And so as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who only went to the 3rd grade, told us, it was the technological knowledge of that scientist. And of course, it wasn't just an individual. It was a group of people who shared his feelings of disappointment and dissatisfaction, and they unleashed their technological power in a devastating way. And so these people, it says that these survivors made their way to surrounding lands, and they carried with them what they were able to salvage of their lost wisdom and knowledge. They took it with them. And now we are on the verge of a new millennium of peace what the psychics called a golden era of 2,000 years of peace about to come in.
Yes.
All bearing witness to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
So we're about to progress into an age of enlightenment.
Yes, ma'am.
We're standing on the threshold of the rediscovery of lost knowledge that is going to be opened up to us.
Yes.
And when that knowledge is opened up to us, we are going to discover the true history of ourselves, and we are going to restore this earth to the paradise that it once was. And here we are in Atlanta. And there is no such thing as a coincidence.
Right.
Now, these people who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us are the tribe of Shabazz had to be taught a lesson. We were told that they rebelled. We were told by the messenger there was rebellion
Yes, ma'am.
against the will of the original God.
Yes, ma'am.
And so a lesson had to be learned. And we have been waiting for the return of that knowledge, but it could not come until the development of the subconscious mind to a certain level where we would be willing to submit ourselves to the will of our God.
Yes, ma'am.
And the wise know that everybody learns when they are ready to learn.
That's right.
Not just because someone is teaching.
That's right.
As was noted by Minister Farrakhan several weeks ago in one of Minister Jibril Muhammad's articles, that people have to be receptive to teaching.
That's right.
Otherwise, you are wasting your time talking to people.
That's right.
No one is led to knowledge against their will. Everyone who has it seeks it for themselves.
That's right.
And you only find knowledge when you are ready to receive it.
That's right.
And so, knowing all of this, it makes sense that Allah would reserve this powerful technical knowledge until we were spiritually ready to handle it.
Yes.
And as I said, they don't know, the scientists of this world, how the pyramids were built, but Master Farad Muhammad told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad how it was done. And he said he would not share it with us because we would ignore it, but the Caucasians would learn it, and this knowledge, he said, is so powerful that it would keep them in rulership forever.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we have to reach a point in our advancement where we develop tools mentally that are powerful enough to take us to that level where we can receive that advanced knowledge and face the challenge of using such power responsibly.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is the only thing that is holding us back from our power. Is our refusal to develop mentally and spiritually to where we qualify to use it. Within the great collective unconscious, and what has been called the Akashic records, or as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, all of the history of the globe is contained in the ether. That is an invisible gas or part of the atmosphere that gives the sky the appearance of being blue. The sky is not really blue, but it looks like it's blue. That is the residual effect of the ether that is in the atmosphere surrounding the planet, and all thoughts that ever occurred on the planet are stored there and can be recaptured and used to elevate ourselves with the proper spiritual development. And so some scholars call what is in the ether the book of life. And in it lies every moment in history. Every moment, every event, every movement, every sound, every thought that has ever been collected is indelibly recorded in the ether. And so as we connect, beloved, with the universal oneness of spiritual being.
Yes.
We have an opportunity to share in the totality of knowingness.
Yes.
As the Holy Quran says, Allah is the best knower.
That's right.
So not only, and we know that knowledge is what? Power.
Yes.
So not only will we each know
Yes.
and remember our own past lives and lessons, so we don't keep repeating mistakes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
See, we're about to have a door open so that no more mistakes will be repeated.
ma'am. Go ahead.
Every time something's corrected, it will be perfected and the mistake will never be made again.
Yes, ma'am.
We will actually know and share the totality of the past and the comprehension of the future. And like a drop of water in the ocean, we will become one with all that is contained therein. We will actually know all that ever was, all that ever will be, and it will happen instantly.
Yes.
One great burst of knowing
Yes.
is about to take place on the planet. We can take it or let it alone.
Right.
And those of us who think we know everything
Yes.
and can't learn anymore, we are going to be left out.
That's right.
You cannot fake study.
That's right.
You can't do it.
That's right.
So the reason you're going to be left out is because if you have not prepared your mind for this, when it comes, it's going to make your brain explode. It'll be too much for you to handle. It's just like they prepare spacecraft. They insulate it so that when it moves out of the Earth's gravitational pull and goes through fire, it won't burn up.
Come on.
So you have to insulate your mind with study, prayer, and submission, because this knowledge that's coming, and it's coming through Minister Farrakhan.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
When he comes with it, I'm telling you, it will absolutely blow us away. And if we have not developed and moved forward, we will not be able to handle it. And so, as I close this, because I don't want to speak long today, because we have some very important information from Minister Farrakhan and from the national headquarters, and we're going to have a brief holdback meeting. But the story of Atlantis really tells us of a deviation from the will of God.
Yes.
And every time you cross that Atlantic Ocean, you think about the results of playing fast and loose with God. Because that ocean is there instead of the land that was once there because of a deviation. Now, lastly, I saved this narrative for last because this narrative is even more in harmony with the story as it was given to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now remember, everything I've said talked about Atlantis, or this great continent, sinking into the ocean. The messenger didn't say that. He said it blew into space.
Yes.
It didn't go down in the ocean. There was no ocean there. It went in space. And what happened is that water filled in the vacuum that was left by this incredible crater that this piece of the land left. Now, according to the narrative given by the renowned metaphysicist Charles Fillmore in a book many of you are familiar with, The 12 Powers of Man, he said the people of that time, and again, no date, the messenger said 66 trillion years. But he said that the people of that time had tremendous psychic power. And if you will remember, during my installation, Minister Farrakhan told us before there were telephones and televisions and telegraphs, we were communicating telepathically. See, there's nothing here that hasn't been here before. Computers have been here.
Yes.
See, it looks advanced to us because man keeps making the same mistake over and over, so people are wiped out. You see this all through the Bible and the Quran, where Allah wipes out whole people and leaves a desert.
Yeah.
So then people come and you say, oh, those are cave people, desert dwellers, and we act as though this little short period of time, what we call modern time, is the first time. I mean, think about how silly that is. That in all the eons of history, no one ever thought of a computer until now. Notice that we keep rising and falling, rising and falling. And every time we fall, we have to go back down to an animal life and start all over again.
Right.
But he said these people had psychic power, and he said, now check this out. Someone among them
Come on.
planned and executed his plan, meaning he was a god, because part of the attribute is to be able to plan and then execute your plan. That's divine power. But one among them planned and executed the destruction of an entire continent and all its people. Now here's where he is in complete agreement with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I read this quote. The corrupted soil. He calls it corrupt because the people that lived on it had become so mentally powerful they thought they were God. See, they forgot that there was the God, and each of them was just a God. And they stopped submitting.
Yes, ma'am.
So they got locked into arrogance. So he refers to the land they lived on as corrupted. He says the corrupted soil was scooped out of what is now the Atlantic Ocean and thrown into space, where it became the lifeless mass known as moon.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, the earth reels like a drunkard under this terrible surgical operation, and it still wobbles out of its true perpendicular. What did Minister Farrakhan tell us in the study guide? He said the earth has a wobble.
That's right. Go ahead.
And that wobble has to be compensated for.
Yes.
And he said just like the earth has a wobble, we have a wobble in our nation.
Right.
See, that wobble is the residual effect of the disobedience and rebellion of our ancestors.
That's right.
And so we need to bow down and submit to Allah so that balance can be restored. The root of illness, the root of disease, the root of financial problems, of messed up relationships, the root of a bad condition in life is all imbalance. That's all it is. Because he said we were created to be in exquisite balance. So he writes here, this man, Fillmore, he said, the earth reeled like a drunkard and it still wobbles out of its true perpendicular. The result of the shock and the removal of so large a part of its body. He goes on to write, and this bears witness to what I was saying last Sunday when we talked about the magnetic poles and the effect that the alignment of the 6 planets in the year 2000 is going to have on that. Now listen at this. He said before this catastrophe, bearing witness to the teachings, before this catastrophe, there was a tropical climate on Earth from pole to pole. The remains of tropical plants and animals are found in frigid zones today. Mute evidence that a great and sudden change at some time took place in the planet's relationship to the sun. He writes and continues, the withdrawal of warmth from the poles. See, because God is stepping away. See, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, who is that mystery God? Because it was from that act of of rebellion, that final cataclysm that God withdrew himself from the public. Now you may have a hard time with this, but he used to walk among the people.
Yes.
Because he wasn't a different being, he was the supreme being.
That's right.
So he lived, and you see the scripture, I will dwell among you.
Yes.
God used to walk around, the God that was the supreme being.
Yes.
And from that time he withdrew himself. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad writes, from public. And to this day, we're following a spook and a spirit. And so the prophecies say they will know him in spirit and in truth.
Yes.
And so he goes on to write, when this cataclysmic event took place, the withdrawal of warmth from the north and south poles of the planet resulted in an unnatural coldness that congealed for the first time rain into snow and ice. And that snow and ice slowly piled up at the poles until they capped the earth to a great depth. And so today we call them the polar ice caps.
Yes.
This, he writes, brought about the great glacial period which lasted thousands of years, a reminder of which we get every year when winter comes, when we are blasted with ice and snow for months at a time that come down from the north. And so winter is a form of chastisement that occurs every year. He says, however, that the earth is slowly regaining its equilibrium and will in due season be restored to its pristine golden age, and all the deserts will bloom as the rose, so runs the tradition. So, as I close, what do we see in this? One of the many things that there are to see is that man is the dominant thinking and character-giving force on the earth.
Yes.
Man, the original man, has made this planet desolate when it should be a paradise.
Yes, ma'am.
Why? Because of arrogance, ignorance, lust, and selfishness.
Yes.
And this is why humanity is tormented by pest, disease, and natural disaster, including earthquakes and the powerful hurricanes that are moving through the Middle Passage from Africa and striking the coast of the United States relentlessly, one after the other, even as I speak. Now, Allah has an active will and a permissive will.
Yes.
In other words, everything that occurs is the result of either the active will of God, meaning he makes it happen, or his permissive will, meaning he allows it to happen. He may not even like it, but he sees it as a place in his larger scheme, so he permits it.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that scientist was permitted to blow up the planet. Why was he allowed to wreak such incredible, unspeakable destruction? Because extreme measures were necessary to change the mental atmosphere of the earth. Because, as I said, the ether contains all the thoughts that were ever thought. So as we shoot thoughts out and project them, they form the atmosphere. In fact, Master Farrakhan Muhammad said the atmosphere over North America is totally dead. And so extreme measures had to be taken to recharge and change the mental atmosphere of the planet, because it had been charged with the thoughts of men and women who exercised this incredible mind power, but they did it in arrogance and ambition. And it has taken 66 trillion years of suffering to come up out of it. So now we are poised to be freed states of consciousness that we built up.
Yes.
You see, when we form in our mental sphere that which is other than true, then we have to unform it. So structures that are no longer useful have to be done away with. You heard Minister Farrakhan say that we are at the end of mosque structure.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's just so pathetic that people do not hear him. And I mean globally, that he is among us.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's just sad that we're always so late, because we wait until someone is dead and gone and it's safe politically to agree with what they said.
Go ahead, beloved.
But if you and I have any comprehension at all
Yes.
of how God works, he doesn't make a man like that every day,
That's right.
or even every 100 years, or even every 67,000 years. He takes it or let it alone. He doesn't work like that.
Go ahead.
And if something happens to that man, and if we don't get in sync with what he's giving us, it will be a long, long time. How do we know this? What I just told you.
That's right. Go ahead, beloved.
How do you think we've been struggling 66 trillion years? See, God can wait you out. Don't play with him.
That's right. Go
Because
ahead.
he'll sit down on you. And not only will you blow it, but your children and their children and their children's children, so far into the future, they don't even know anything about you.
That's right.
And they'll still be down and out in the darkness.
Come on.
This is not someone to play with.
That's right.
And so structures that are not useful have to be destroyed. But when he said there's no more mosque structure, the U.S. government should have been listening.
Right.
Because what he was saying is that the mosque has a place in a nation.
Yeah.
You can't build a nation in a mosque,
That's right.
but you can have a mosque in a nation.
Yeah.
Because the people in society can go to the mosque
Right.
to hear the imam, get a word of inspiration,
Right.
do their prayer, and that's it.
That's right.
Then you go back out and you build your economy and your health system
Go ahead.
and your businesses and your education.
Go ahead.
You can't do all that in the mosque.
That's right.
Doesn't even make any sense.
That's right.
And so you who are responding to him, understand who you are. You are people who go back so far in time
Come on.
and have such a deep-seated desire to be a part of this that you're capable of responding to the word, to the unseen. So you're able to accept the theology without seeing any evidence of it in the community.
Right.
But that's a very small, finite number of people that can do that. The vast majority of our people, they're not coming in here.
Right.
You can't sit around and wait for people to come in the mosque.
That's right. Please.
You're actually asking for what you don't want. Because if we believe what the messenger taught, and it's in scripture, and we know it in what we live, that we are spiritually and mentally dead. We're dead.
Right.
Those people out there are dead. So what you are saying, sitting up in the mosque, is I'm just waiting for the dead to get up out of their graves and walk up in the mosque. Knowing if you saw a dead person get up and come in here, we would all run.
Go ahead.
So the same thing is true spiritually and mentally. Do you want a spiritually, mentally dead person just walk up on you? No, you have to go out and raise them up.
That's right.
And Minister Farrakhan showed us how to do that in 1995.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have to come from and through the Creator. And so now we have to rid ourselves of the impulse in us, that impulse that made that scientist blow up the planet. The brown germ that constructs and sustains the ego. That's got to go.
Yes.
It's got to be microsurgically removed. And no one can, you have to do surgery on yourself. I was going to tell you about a movie. Mental cleansing.
Yes.
We, myself, yourself, all of us. Now, in the Bible, as I close, the baptism with water, and they do it in the churches, they have no idea, you know, you're baptized, dip them in the water. But what is the real meaning of that? That is a symbol of coming out of selfishness, being mentally and spiritually cleansed. Selfishness is merely an excess of self-identity, when we're just too consumed with the personality. And that inflation of ego, as we have learned the hard way, the logical extreme of that is that it can absolutely throw the planet off of its axis.
Yes.
That's how deep this can get. And so we have to cease ego inflation so that a higher field of action can appear. We must be able to see things from a higher level. That will make us desire to be part of what we see. We don't desire to be part of the realm of God because we can't see that type of life. So we have to elevate our own thinking. No one can do it for us. The first step is a willingness to let go of thoughts that uphold the ego and make the ego God. That willingness to let go is symbolized by John the Baptist, crying in the wilderness, denying himself the comforts of life. And if you study Scripture, you'll see that the personalities in Scripture always represent the mental attitude of a person. Now, John the Baptist represents the mental attitude of someone living in the time of Christ, as written. See, it's a symbolic thing, that they're prototypes, so all that reoccurs over and over. So you and I are actually in the position of a John the Baptist, in that the Jesus is living. Born in the same time frame. But John the Baptist went ahead crying to people about a change that is coming, begging the people to give up the old and announcing the coming of the new, because when Jesus came, it was the end of law. You see the fall of the infrastructure of America, the fall of President Clinton in front of everybody, is to demonstrate the failure of law to inculcate morality in people. Law has a finite value. Because even the president couldn't muster up enough discipline to uphold his office. You see? Because you can't just tell people, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. See, we have to advance beyond that. And so John the Baptist announces the coming of Jesus, who's bringing in a new world order, which is built on love. So that you don't have to be told, thou shalt not steal. You would never take what's not yours. You would never kill. You would never lust after your neighbor's spouse, and so on and so forth. Now, so John the Baptist represents that mental attitude of being willing to move into another level. But the Pharisees of the Bible, who Jesus had to contend with, they represent people who cling to tradition, custom, and scripture and refuse to let go. John the Baptist represents the ability of your and my intellect to make a transition from the mental plane to the spiritual plane. But the Pharisees represent the inability to enter the transition. Now, we've been told we're in a transition. We're at zero now. Because the intellect has been developed and has mastered technology. It's the spirit that has not been met with yet. And so the Pharisees and Jesus' disagreement with them comes as a result of the Pharisees' inability to let go of the old. and they would rationalize.
Yes.
See, they want to reason with him. And we are taught that reason is limited. It is finite.
Yes.
But Allah is unlimited. He is infinite. So when the only way you accept something is if you can rationalize it, you're going to shut yourself down.
Yes, ma'am.
Why? Because if you only accept what you can reason with, that means you only accept what you think you know already.
Right. Go ahead.
And when the unknown comes, then you're going to reject it. And so you won't make it into the new, because the new world order is something that the eye has not seen.
Go ahead, beloved.
And the ear has not heard. So instead of saying, I'm not going to listen to Farrakhan because he's not saying what I was taught, that's a sign that he's who he says he is.
That's right.
Because that person comes with what has not been heard.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead.
So some of us are like John the Baptist, ready for the transition, and like John the Baptist, a prophecy of greater things because we're willing to move to a higher level. We're not there. We have yet to come into the full consciousness of the Spirit, which will make us light up and do powerful works. But we're moving in that direction. But like Jonah, we're running, each one of us, talk to yourself, each one of us has an assignment that God gave us directly to facilitate the bringing about of this new world order. Now, we don't recognize the assignment because it may seem as though it has nothing to do with divine. Now, how do I know what I was given that I'm running from? Well, for one thing, we're told to study Jonah by Minister Farrakhan. Well, one thing we know that whatever it is distasteful to us. Make a list of the things you know you're supposed to be doing that you don't want to do, that turn you off. Oh, I just can't go there. He didn't want to go to Nineveh. He'll send me anywhere but there. And as Minister Van told us several weeks ago, Jonah and his people were preaching the destruction of Nineveh. They hated them. They wanted God to destroy the people of Nineveh. And then God says, yeah, Jonah, I tell you what, you go and save them. He was, are you kidding me? I'm going to jump on a boat and go to a far land and hide from you. And God shook up the boat until Jonah had to leave to keep everybody else from being killed, and went into the belly of a whale, and that's where we all are right now. We're in the whale's belly. We're in North America, but we're also imprisoned in a structure that our brain has formed and refuses to let go of. And we have got to stop running and submit. Some among us, though, are Pharisees. This is how it was. This is how it's going to be. And produce arguments to oppose Minister Farrakhan. Oppose his direction. Everything he says is wrong. Without realizing that in that state of mind, we have come far away from being obedient and receptive. And if you don't have a receptive state of mind, you cannot grow.
That's right.
Then you, without realizing it, you begin to look and sound like you are out of time and out of place. And you don't even know it. You become opposed to everything that will produce progress. You become an impediment to progress. And you cling to old and obsolete ways. So we have to not be like the Pharisees. We can't debate with God, trying to escape his service. We have to give up like Jonah gave up. And we must take as final the instructions we receive from Allah through his servant, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And brothers and sisters, if you will come and take guidance from Minister Farrakhan, I don't want to be no Muslim, I don't want to join. See, there's that structure.
Right.
You don't join anything.
Come on.
You just accept your own and be yourself.
That's right.
But the teaching and training that we have received in North America is no more, I'm telling you. And you will find, if you listen and follow this guidance, that it is a right course for you, it is a right course for all humanity, and in the end, it is the only one that we can possibly take.
Yes,
May Allah bless all of us with the light of understanding as I leave you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.